Members, this is the appointed time and we have a quorum, so I call this meeting to order. This meeting will be adjourned at 6 p.m. today, but if need be, I will extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Let me remind members that if there is direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to items being discussed today, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak according to Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure. Please also note the requirement in relation to direct pecuniary interest according to Rule 84 of the Rules of Procedure. Now, I need to declare my interest in relation to the two public works items to be discussed at today's meeting. I am the consultant of Bank of China, Hong Kong. Now, in relation to the first item, FCR 2025-26-36, members are invited to recommend the passage of the upgrading of 90 Ti to Category A at an estimated cost of 176 million in MOD prices for the construction of a public transport interchange at Sheung, Shui areas 4 and 30, Site 1, Phase 2. According to paragraph 3A of the FC procedures, the Public Works Subcommittee has not recommended a further discussion of this paper by the FC, nor have we received any joint petition for further discussion by 3 members. We are not going to further discuss this paper. I will put FCR 2025-26 paper number 36 to a vote. Will those in favor please raise your hands? Thank you. Anyone against? No? I think the majority of members who have voted are in favor of this item, so the item is carried. Item 2, FCR 2025-26, numbers 37. Members are invited to endorse the proposal submitted by the PWSC, that is upgrading of the remainder of 399DS entitled Relocation of Sha-Tin Sewage Treatment Works to Caverns Remaining Works to Category A at an estimated cost of 12.9304 billion in money of the day prices. According to paragraph 3A of the FC procedures, the Public Works Subcommittee has recommended a further discussion of this paper by the FC, and we have not received any joint petition from not less than 3 members that the decision should be overturned. So in relation to the recommendation, we are going to further discuss paper. We also have government officials joining today's meeting. The PWSC has recommended a 2-hour discussion for this paper. The administration has also provided a supplementary paper. And we're joined by Mr. David Lam, Under Secretary for Development, Mr. Johnny Chan, Deputy Secretary for Development, Mr. Kenneth Shek, Principal Assistant Secretary for Development, as well as Mr. Ringo Mok, Director of the DS, and also Mr. Tony Leung, Assistant Director of Drainage Services. We have 13 members waiting to speak. Mr. Kenneth Fok, Dominic Lee, Gary Chan, Yang Wing Kit, Dennis Leung, Connie Lam, Lam Chen Singh, Dr. So Chung Wing, Eunice Yong, Chen Siu Hong, Loai Kwok, Stanley Lee, Frankie Yik. I will give each member 5 minutes. Let's start with Mr. Kenneth Fok. Right, I have received the supplementary information in relation to the issues arising from the previous meeting, so I thank the administration for the supplementary paper. I support this funding application. As I understand, the latest estimated cost is $12.9 billion. That's down by $2.7 billion. That's good news for us. And in fact, the direct procurement model has made savings. According to other members, the government should be more proactive in adopting this approach so that we can make further cost cuts. My question is as follows. For the old plant, it was commissioned in 1982. It's been almost 50 years, so it's time for a revamp. My question is this: have you considered the future? 40 years down the road, what technologies will be adopted? Is it too hard to give an estimate now? I just want to know how long will this investment good for? My next question is this. Now, I'm not a construction professional, but I have the feeling that in relation to demolition works, they are quite costly, despite making savings in other aspects. I understand that for decommissioning, demolition, and decontamination, altogether $800 million will be spent. So that's quite a big sum. Can you explain why so much money is needed for decommissioning, demolition, and decontamination? About additional operating and recurring expenditure, that's about $300 million, right? I want to clarify that this $400 million are for the recurrent operating expenditure. Is that right? And also from the paper, it is said that we don't rule out raising the charges for industrial sewage discharge, etc. Does it mean that the fees and charges will be adjusted? Undersecretary Mr. Lam. Thank you, member, for the support. Now, in relation to this new treatment plant, it will be good for at least 5 decades, subject to proper maintenance. So it's a long-term investment. The second question is about the commissioning and demolition. Now, things are not the same as in the case of an ordinary building because of the machines involved for sewage treatment. We need to be careful not to cause spillage and affect the residential neighborhood nearby, because according to the paper, we have high-density residential neighborhood just several meters away. That is why we need to take a special approach in demolishing the septic tank and to avoid the spillage and odor problems. We also need to conduct decontamination afterwards. In fact, for relevant works cited in the supplementary paper, you will find that the costs are roughly the same as in other projects. Now, about $300 million of additional expenditure. That's the additional expenditure for the treatment works because of the new technology adopted. In the old plant, we adopt the anaerobic digestion approach, and now it will, in the past, it would take 20 hours for the sewage to be treated. But now we have a new film of microorganisms, and that will make use of electrodes to speed up the sewage treatment process by half at least. And that also entails additional expenditure to enhance efficiency. Now, the sewage treatment works are of utmost importance because it will treat the sewage discharged by 700,000 residents living in Sha Tin and Ma On Shan. If it is not efficient enough, there is a chance that sewage may be spilled over to Total Harbour. And that is why it is essential that we enhance efficiency. Right, I understand that we are using new technology, and that costs more. But does it mean that you will adjust the sewage discharge fees? Now, the government will keep in view the implementation situation. We'll have regard to the affordability of the public. We will also abide by the users pay principle and also the impact on the C&I industry and make timely adjustments to the fees and charges. Mr. Dominic Lee. Now, for the Sha Tin sewage treatment works, the plant is situated near Pak Shek Kok, and there is an odor problem. It spans 28 hectares. After reprovisioning to the cavern, land will be released, and then the science park actually has a plan to conduct expansion. So I support this funding application. My question is this. The cost estimates have been lowered because of the direct procurement model. I appreciate that. Now, this project was floated in 2019, but it won't be completed until 2031. So as long as 12 years will be needed, According to the paper, the works will be completed in 2029, but it will take 2 years before the existing works will be demolished. That's up to 2031. Is it the reason for the high cost? And also, as mentioned by the Undersecretary, the annual recurring expenditure amounts to $380 million, and about 200 million of that relates to electricity charges. Now, can you introduce energy saving features? Can you be more aggressive so as to make savings, such as using renewable energy or other technologies, solar power, etc., so that in the long run we can lower the operating costs?
Thank you for your questions. First, about the timing. We have said that it takes 2 years to demolish and decontaminate. This is based on our experience. It is unsimilar to demolishing a concrete building. We need to be careful about the contamination. We have to watch out for the escape of odor. So it is much more complicated than the ordinary demolition of buildings. For land decontamination, usually it takes 1 to 2 years' time for newly developed areas. So it is a reasonable arrangement as far as the timeline is concerned. Where there's room for expedition, we will do so. And then the member suggested that we should rely on renewable energy. We welcome his idea. We are on the same page. We'll try to adopt a new technology. So what we are doing is that we'll have the digital twin technology. In other words, we can try to look at how the plant operates, and then in relation to the resources needed, we can further optimize it. From the mainland experience and overseas experience, by relying on digital twin technology, there can be a saving of 10 to 20% in relation to the operational cost. We'll certainly try different means to try to drive down the operational cost. Next, Mr. Gary Chen. Chairman, all the time, as far as the sewage plant is concerned, I have great reservation about the budget. The entire budget is $32.8 billion. Now they come here to ask for another $12 billion. Given the tight budgetary situation, it is quite inappropriate. But it is said that it will address the regional odor problem. And since we have already committed ourselves, it is not quite good to abandon it at such a late stage. But still, I've got a suggestion for the Undersecretary. $12.9 billion. Please don't ask for it and get it in one go. Can you not spread it out over 10 years' time so as to ease the pressure on the public finance? And then for the $1 billion contingency fee, I think your previous projects have great savings. And in fact, $1.4 billion contingency fees have been untouched. So can you not promise that you try your best not to use the $1 billion contingency fee that can save us some money? And then the third point from me, it is quite unfair to the citizens. Now, $12.9 billion, they come from the public pocket. Now, instead of I think you are having an additional annual recurrent expenditure of $386 million, a rise from the current figure of 150, in a total of $530 million. You have talked about new technologies, but then it will be citizens who will be paying for the sewage discharge. So can you guarantee that the future sewage charge rate will not go up just because you have got this new project? Please switch on the mic for Mr. Lam. Well, for the relocation, it was discussed for a long time. It was discussed a long time ago. It was because the local people thought that the open air plant was causing a nuisance to them. And we also found that it is most appropriate to deal with the problem by relocating it in a cavern. And that's why we have gone ahead. It is mega in scale. We have been responsible in our approach. We did phase out the project In other words, we can be more accurate in our estimation before we come here for a figure, and you also have time to judge whether it is reasonable. As early back as 2020, we gave a figure of $50 billion. I think the total would be $33 billion. Mr. Chen asked if we could spread out the disbursement. This is no problem on our part. We came here on the first occasion to get $10 billion, but then it doesn't mean that in a single budgetary year we'll be earmarking $10 billion in one go. In fact, the first year $200 million, the second year $1.4 billion. So we'll be spreading out the expenditure. And then a word about the contingency fee. It's called the contingency fee. Usually we don't keep it. It will only be deployed when there is a need to do so. Therefore, we can assure the member that we didn't use the contingency fee for stage 1. It is really to play safe. And in fact, if we need the money, we have to redeploy it internally. So it's not a matter of earmarking it as exclusively. There may be unforeseen changes. Say, for example, there may be local needs to ask us to do more, but we will certainly be very cautious when we try to use the contingency fee. And then for the review of our sewage charge rate, there are certain criteria. We did say that before, and we will certainly be adopting the same before we consider adjustment of the sewage charge rate. Mr. Chen, can he not commit himself? That is, instead of attracting $500 million per year as annual recurring expenditure, can you not try to keep it down? Yes, indeed, we'll try to deploy digital twin technology, hoping that the operational expenditure can be kept at a lower level. Judging from the overseas and mainland experience, our operational expenditure can be lowered by 10 to 20%. Next, Mr. Yang Wen-kit. Thank you, Chair. I do support the project. I think the project is good. We are going to get a new sewerage plant, and it will be more efficient, and we can address the problem of local odor, and land can be released for more beneficial use. So it is a variable project, but then there will be additional annual recurrent expenditure of $386.25 million. $200 million will be for electricity. A few years back, the CE took us to GBA, and we visited a particular sewage treatment plant. Other than treating the sewage, I think they also produce potable water. Now we're spending so much money to build this plant. I just wonder if we can borrow the experience from the mainland so as to purify the water so that it could become drinkable water. In this way, you're creating value, and then probably we can offset some of the additional annual recurrent expenditure. As to whether it will be marketable, I think if government departments promise to purchase that water, then it will be good. But of course, I don't know if you have got such a plan. Mr. Lam, I thank Mr. Yang for his comments and his support as to whether the treated water can be reused. Well, in fact, in the northern metropolis, we do plan to use the treated water. Therefore, we need the purifying plant. The water produced can be used for, say, flushing the toilet. So it is a better use of our limited water resources. As in the case of Sha Tin, whether we can do the same, it may not be quite appropriate. First of all, it is because it is a secondary treatment plant. If you want to purify it to such an extent that it can be reused, it needs to be tertiary in terms of the level of treatment. It will be even more expensive. So currently, this is going to be a secondary treatment plant, and then the water or the effluent will be channeled to the Victoria Harbour or Kwun Tong. So it will still be benefiting the society. If I may have a follow-up as to whether it is variable, it depends on the size of the savings. That is a factor we need to consider. Now, additional $380 million, in other words, $3.8 billion in 10 years' time. If we want to have it drinkable, that is purified to such an extent that it is drinkable, can you not give us a figure as to how much more money we need to spend? Maybe you know the answer and you say that it is not feasible. But still, I believe that we need to consider such options so as to offset part of the expenditure. We need to learn from their experience. We went to Guangzhou, and I think their example was an excellent one.
Right, will you consider proposals along these lines? Well, I think I share the same thoughts with Mr. Yeung. As I mentioned, we also use purified water or treated water for flushing purposes in Northern Metropolis, so that we won't be spending more on procuring drinking water. So I think that we're seeing things eye to eye. Mr. Dennis Lau, Chairman, the FTU supports the funding proposal, but I have questions about the dollar sign. The question is this: about the existing Sha Tin sewage treatment works and the one to be reprovisioned into a cavern. Can you tell us on what scientific basis have you drawn up the cost estimates, and can you tell us the cost effectiveness? Because we've been using old technologies and the old plant, old equipment. The maintenance costs, therefore, could be quite high. Whereas in the future, can you tell us, after investing $12.9 billion into the new treatment plant, can you give us a cost-benefit analysis vis-à-vis the $33 billion originally proposed? The next question is this: the plant will be reprovisioned to a rock cavern, but then on the outside you need to build a ventilation building, and you'll be spending resources to help, say, improve ventilation and lower the temperature inside. So is there any strategy to optimize the use of resources to further lower operating costs? The third question is this: previously, I made this suggestion, though I'm not a member of the development panel or the PWSC. Can you add the educational element to the process so that you can mount publicity and tell people about the merit of the project in question for the purpose of grooming talents? And we need to tell good stories about the construction projects in Hong Kong. That should be a check-in spot outside, but I don't see anything in your design in a paper. So can you tell us more about that? Undersecretary. Thank you, Mr. Leung. About the indicators, I will give the floor to the director to answer that, see if any indicator is available. When it comes to cost effectiveness, I want to explain that the treatment works will be treating the sewage of 700,000 people living in Sha Tin and Ma On Shan, and is a very important livelihood project. It will have great significance to environmental protection as well. Of course, we do have an existing plant, but it runs like an old car. You don't know when it will actually break down. And if it happens, that means sewage will be directly discharged into Tolo Harbour. And by moving the facility into a cavern and adopting a new plant, of course, we will enhance efficiency. Let's see if the department can provide more figures about ventilation, building, or other facilities that require additional expenditure. I understand Mr. Dennis Leung's point that we need to lower the operating costs as much as possible. I believe this is where technology comes in. We can make use of, for example, digital twin, as I mentioned. This is an emerging technology in Hong Kong. Through harnessing digital twin technology, we can lower operating costs by 10 to 20%. That's according to overseas and mainland experience. And on the third point, I fully agree with Mr. Leung that in fact a part of the budget goes to an administrative building. So in fact, I'm discussing with my colleagues and see whether an exhibition gallery can be set up for the public. We do agree that this is good STEAM education for students. So I look forward to further exchange of ideas with Mr. Leung. Well, let's hear from the director. As mentioned by the Under Secretary, this treatment plant has a serviceable life of 50 years. We need to build a new plant to enhance reliability and stability. And we also need to follow the latest standards. So for this new treatment plant and the discharge standards, everything remains the same. The reason is that according to the EIA, building a secondary treatment plant will not have adverse impact on the environment. It's also cost effective. And as mentioned, by releasing land, by reprovisioning the facility into a cavern, we can release 28 hectares of land, and this also means cost effectiveness. By using renewable energy, we will also be able to pay less for electricity. Next, Ms. Connie Lam. Now about this project at a cost of $12.9 billion, in principle I support it. It's a livelihood project. But I'd like to raise 2 points about the site to be vacated. As I understand, this will be put to good use. And as I understand, the Science Park has expressed interest in using this site together with the Ma Liu Shui reclamation plan. 88 hectares of new land were provided. Is there any specific study or plan about this reclamation project? Residents in Sha Tin and Ma On Shan have quite strong views about reclamation. Reclamation means more money spent, and against the backdrop of fiscal deficit, may I have a response from the administration, what the plan will be? And about $386 million of additional recurrent expenditure. This will be reflected in the sewage charge or the trade effluent charge. Does it mean that these charges will go up? Will the administration consider phasing the rates hike? Because in my constituency, there are grassroots families and SMEs. Is there any exemption or waiver mechanism? Right, I don't think the third point has been discussed before, Secretary. About the sewage charge, we consider, we adopt the same criteria across the territory. We need to have regard to the actual circumstances, and we also need to abide by the users pay principle, public affordability, as well as impact on the C&I sectors in considering the adjustment. So that's all we can say at this moment. About reclamation, right, we do not have a timetable for reclamation at this point. As explained in the paper, at this stage, we're minded to allow Science Park to use the site for expansion. The preliminary study is being conducted. I believe once findings are available, we can then go further and consider the way forward. So to answer your question, we do not have a specific timetable for reclamation. Next, Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Thank you, Chairman. We discussed this item at the Public Works Subcommittee. This project is divided into 4 stages, and this is the remaining stage. $20 billion have been spent on the previous stages. Now we're wrapping up. That means we're paying about $13.2 billion for the rest of the project. The project began some 10 years ago. Now the application entails $12.9 billion. That's not a small sum, but at least it has come down by $2.7 billion comparing to the previous estimate. So I think we should go ahead unless there is a strong reason not to do so, because the cavern is ready. If we don't go ahead, what should we do about it? The consensus was drawn up quite a long time ago, so of course I support going ahead with it. Now, against the current fiscal deficit, of course, if the government proposes to have another rock cavern project, we need to think twice. But at this point, I think it's only right for this project to go ahead. Anyway, I have 2 questions. The first one is this. Undersecretary just now explained that after the reprovision, the vacated site and also the 88 hectares of land to be reclaimed in Shui will be discussed. That's according to the timetable you gave before. But against the current fiscal deficit, perhaps you need to reprioritize public works, and as a result, in your reply and in your supplementary information, you have not mentioned any timetable. But even so, this piece of land will be vacated. You need to come up with a plan. When the government's fiscal position improves in the future, you'll be able to kickstart the project right away. We don't want the site to be left idle. We're talking about a really premium site close to the harbor front with good transport accessibility. So don't waste this opportunity. The second question is this. It's about the cost. $5 billion out of the $13 billion are for E&M facilities. Now you mentioned the MIMEP in general construction. You have MIC. In E&M construction, you use MIMEP, and that's integrated or multi-trade integrated mechanical, electrical, and plumbing method. Now, with further advancement of technologies, is it possible that costs will further come down? That means of the $5 billion spent on E&M facilities, is there room to further compress this cost? Undersecretary. I think I'll give the floor to the department to take your second question. But let me first explain the dollar sign. The cost estimate reflects the returned tender price. So to take the first question, the new plant will be commissioned in 2029, and that demolition and decontamination of the old site won't be completed until 2031. So there is still time for us to contemplate this use. We won't left any site idle. As we consider permanent uses of the site, we also allow temporary uses. So rest assured, we're not going to leave any site idle. Now let's see if the department will take the second question. Yes, Mr. Mock. About the MIMEP method. It's a contractual requirement. The contractor must make the best endeavor to use the MIMEP method, and that is also reflected in the return tender price. We definitely support this method because it saves cost and time for on-site assembly. Next, Dr. So Cheung. Thank you, Chair. Well, I thank the government for making the best efforts to save costs. I think it sets the perfect example for other public works projects. The cost has come down to $12.9 billion. That's a drastic drop, and that shows that originally the cost estimates were inflated. Now you're able to save up to $2.7 billion. That's not because of less work processes or market price fluctuations. The savings had to do with the departments giving up on some dumb ways of completing the project. According to the paper, there are 3 reasons. By taking direct procurement approach, you're able to save $1.7 billion, and then you separate civil works and E&M works, you manage to save $700 million. And then another $300 million refers to the return to tender prices. As I understand, for direct procurement, it means you directly procure from the suppliers. We're talking about a big price difference. The government should have proceeded with direct procurement way back. And then separate tendering for civil works and E&M works, you saved $700 million. So my question is this. For direct procurement, is it that you managed to make savings because you directly procured materials from the supplier? If that is the case, does it go against the fairness and impartiality principle? Have you compared quotations with other manufacturers or suppliers? My second question is this. I'm really baffled. It's such a big project. Why are you saving $700 million by separating tendering for civil and E&M works? Because separate tendering had always been practiced in the past, why is it that on this occasion you managed to save so much? Well, I'll say a few words, Chair, and then I will give the floor to the departments to elaborate on the answer. Now, at the subcommittee of the Legislative Council to discuss construction costs, we talked about direct procurement. Direct procurement could help lower construction costs, but the extent really depends on individual projects. In Sha Tin sewage treatment works, we managed to achieve savings through 2 ways. First, for E&M facilities used in the treatment plant, the Drainage Services Department is the #1 expert in Hong Kong, and that is why we have the clout to directly procure materials from the suppliers. If I am not an expert from of the E&M field, I cannot comment, but if I am, then I can directly procure from the supplier. The second point is economy of scale. Because we are procuring on a big scale, we're able to save more. Is it that different tendering methods can make different savings? It depends on individual projects. Perhaps I'll give the floor to the department to explain the separate tendering for civil and E&M works.
Mr. Mok, for many years, the DSD has constructed many sewerage plants as well as other complex projects. whenever civil and E&M works of complicated natures are involved, then we're usually talking about sewage treatment plants. There are two approaches. First of all, a combined one, that is a single contractor taking care of both the civil as well as the E&M works. Second approach is separating them into two contracts, one for civil, the other for E&M works. So there will be the issue of interfacing. As to the factors for consideration, they are as such. When it is a merged or a combined one, you may have a joint venture by which a single contractor will undertake all the risks. That is, when there is a risk in the civil side of the matter, then the E&M contractor will also share it. But then when we have separate contracts, then the contractors will only take care of their own risk. So for the past few years, we have been using separate contracts. But then there is a disadvantage. We need to have our in-house staff as well as our consultants and resident engineers to take care of the interfacing issues. But then there is a cost effectiveness here. So we have separated the contracts. I think in future, for similar sewage treatment plants, we will have separate contracts. And then we are actively considering DBOs, that is design, building and operation, will all be taken up by a single contractor or operator. So when compared with the government being the operator, they will have separate contracts. Otherwise, for DBOs, it will be a combined one. What about the other element in my questions? How can you assure us that you will be fair and open? Well, when we have direct procurement, it is global, so it is open, fair and competitive. Thank you. Next, Ms. Eunice Sheung. Chair, I also support the project. I'm grateful to the department and the Bureau for giving us a briefing. Well, the title is relocation, but in fact it is a reprovisioning. So I've been asked to ask this question so as to give you the opportunity to explain the matter. Relocation means just relocating the old plant to a new site, but in fact it is a matter of reprovisioning, and you will still be treating 300,000 cubic meters of sewage for Sha Tin, Ma Shan and Tai Wai. So you are treating 340,000 cubic meters of sewage. In the new plant, can we not treat a higher volume of sewage so as to serve a greater catchment? And then for separate contracts, yes, I can appreciate it. Your construction cost has been saved by 17%. And then, of course, the citizens are concerned about public finance. I think in this way, you have addressed our concern and is reflected in the costs. Of course, when there are separate contracts, there are issues of interfacing as well as division of labor and responsibility. Now you'll be having different contractors. How are you going to coordinate the work? And should there be delays or dispute over who should bear the responsibility? What can you do to prevent jeopardizing public interest? And then odor. The plant will be housed within the cavern. I think you are in a better position to manage the odor. So are you going to monitor the odor? Are you going to make public the data so as to assure the public that in the long term the odor issue can go away? Thank you. Mr. Lam, for questions 2 and 3, departments can give you a more detailed answer. Now for separate contracts, it means the department will take the initiative to address the interfacing work. So they take the initiative, but then this will lower the cost. Now, as to odor, there is a vent at the top of the hill, and the air will be deodorized before allowing it to be emitted. Maybe the department can supplement to my answer. As to the first point, I also want to add a answer here. We call it relocation, but then we aren't talking about moving house or moving office so that you take all your furniture, etc., to the new venue. In fact, it is a treatment plant that has a history of 50 years. So we are building a new treatment plant to replace the existing one. So I thank Ms. Sheung for raising this question. It is no simple removal job. We do have parameters to guide us as to the capacity of the treatment works. Now, currently, it will be 300. The current capacity is 340,000 cubic meters, and it's been utilized by up to about 90%. We have the population projection figures, and they guide us in our development. Now, 340,000 cubic meters being the capacity, it will be good enough to deal with the sewage arising from the new developments in the catchment area. As to the second as well as the third points, I will defer to the department. Thank you, Chair. As to the challenges arising from direct procurement, now for separate contracts, we are experienced. That has been tried in many other projects. But then for direct procurement, it is the first time we try it in such a mega project. We will beef up our own monitoring work. We have engaged consultants to deal with the day-to-day monitoring work on site. At the same time, the DSD itself has also got a team that directly takes part in the daily discussion on the site. So what is important is to make sure that we have good management of the supply chain. The biggest challenge lies in the supply chain, and we want to find room to lower the cost. Another point is about older management. There was an EIA, and under the EIAO, during the operational phase, we need to submit reports to the EPD in relation to our older management. This is a requirement under the ordinance. We have had close liaison with Sha Tin District Council. Should there be any older issues, you can call 1823 to lodge a complaint, and in fact Sha Tin Council district councillors are also concerned about that. And should there be any exceedance, we have as usual been informing the councillors, so the data is public, right? Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, at our last PWSC meeting, there was a thorough discussion of the relocation. Once again, I would like to thank the Bureau and the Department for their detailed explanation. It is a breakthrough because within a sewage treatment plant, you are resorting to direct procurement. There is an advantage here, a lowered cost. But on the other hand, the Bureau and the Department would have to bear a higher degree of risk, because if you are not having the direct procurement approach, then the contractor will build the plant and will bear the risk and buy the components. But should something go wrong, then you have to find out who should bear the risk, the liability. And you have to find out what has gone wrong, and that would affect the commissioning time, and within the operational phase, you may be at a loss as to who you should go after. I'm glad to see that the government is happy to take up the responsibility. I also agree that the department is very experienced and is capable of taking care of it. So in future, in relation to quality control as well as safety, right squarely on the shoulder of the department. Last time I asked a question, but I don't think it has been answered. First of all, digital twin technology to be used in the Kevin plant. Yes, I agree that it will enhance the efficiency, but then the digital twin will not stand alone. You will use it together with BIM as well as CDE, but then you haven't yet told us that after using BIM and after using digital twin technology, how much more you need to spend, because you have to get more resources. It is said that you can save 10 to 20% of the cost, but how many more equipments, how many more plants do you need to add? So where can we find the relevant item in the breakdown? They say in the construction, installation of fire services, building services, and related E&M facilities, which will cost $1.3 billion, or whether it should come under $7.8 billion in item A. For Sheung, I think digital twin technology has already been deployed there. So can you tell us about the enhancement in the efficiency? 10 to 20% savings. Is that merely a figure from overseas and mainland experience, or is it based on the Sheung experience, so that you can convince us that it is value for money? So how much money to be spent on the digital twin, and what about your experience in Sheung? Are you sure that it is a positive sort of outcome?
Right, about sensors. They should come out of the allocation for E&M facilities. Now, as for the further breakdown, I think I'll give the floor to the department to see whether this breakdown is available. Now, about Sheung treatment works, I also was part of the team applying for funding. So when we gave an answer to the Legislative Council, we talked about overseas and mainland experience because it was not yet commissioned. Now we believe it's more reliable. So let's hear from the department. Mr. Mok. In the past few years, for the plants being built or ready to be built, we already included the digital twin technology requirement in the contract. But we must also bear in mind that the digital twin technology is, after all, quite new. We shared experience with mainland and overseas experts, and in fact, our country and the US are countries that have been taking the lead in this technology. So they are able to provide the relevant data from the operation, and as mentioned in the supplementary information paper, the technology will allow a saving of 10 to 20% of the cost. This is also due to various factors. Now, but we've included that in our contract as one of the requirements. However, let's say we prepare tender today. By the time works commence, we're talking about at least 6 months. There may be further developments and major changes. So despite including that as a basic requirement, by the time we will discuss with the contractors and the suppliers or even I&T startups, and only by then will we finalize the details for adopting digital twin technology. And also about this contractual requirement, the cost of using the technology should not be too high. There are two levels of using digital twin technology. On one level, you can have full automation. You don't need anyone manning the workshop. The AI will help make decisions and help execute orders. The other level is that it's not fully automated. The digital twin technology makes recommendations for future operators, and it's for the future operators to decide whether to follow the recommendations. So there is room to further develop the technology. You ask for the unit cost of using digital twin technology. I'm afraid we do need more time to collect data to come up with a meaningful answer. The other point is about BIM and AI. In fact, BIM as well as AI's application supports the development of digital twin technology. Chairman, I want to raise a further point. Please do. Well, the cost estimates in this paper reflects the returned tender prices. Does it mean that the cost estimates have not included the digital twin and BIM portion, and only when you reach the design stage will you include the portion about digital twin? Please be quick. We have included that as a basic requirement, but there is room to refine the details later for each item. That should be additional expenditure, but the amount should not be very substantial. Dr. Loy Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to say at the outset that I give my strong support to the relocation of Sha Tin sewage treatment works to caverns, especially the remaining stage, so that the existing plants can be demolished for land to be released. This item has been the bone of contention in the area for many years. There have been a lot of bickerings about the technical aspects. Now, when I was the appointed member of Sha Tin District Council, I received inquiries from many local residents. But let's not forget the original intention. We need to revamp the existing Sha Tin sewage treatment works. We needed to do that, and as time progressed, it became more and more urgent. Now, is it possible to have an in situ revamp of the facilities? Is it possible to find another place in Sha Tin and Ma On Shan? All of these proposals did not work. Eventually, another idea was floated, and that's moving the plant into rock cavern. It's not really a novel concept. In fact, 30 years ago, we provisioned a sewage treatment plant in a rock cavern in Stanley. It's the 30th anniversary. Many local residents know nothing about the existence of this plant because no odor problem has ever been generated. It works in a cavern space. In many countries, such as the Scandinavian countries, they also make good use of caverns. Today we talk about data centers. Caverns are perfect locations for data centers to support the supercomputing center. Coming back to my point about the original intention, the site released by relocating the existing plant will be put to good use. Another point is this. As I live in Tai Po, when I drive southbound and drive past the sewage treatment works, odor remains a major problem, even with all the car windows closed. So is the local residents' aspiration to see this problem solved. Many years have passed. In 2014, the site investigation was finally conducted, and we've come to the final stage of the funding application. government departments have been striving to save costs. So the original estimates of this project were $50 billion. Now it will come down to 32.8 billion altogether, and for the remaining stage just $12.9 billion, all because of direct procurement. Now this is unique because we're talking about some special equipment and machinery. So there isn't risk involved in this project because of the uniqueness. That is why we must proceed with this remaining stage without delay. My question is rather about expediting the works, because construction won't be completed by 2029, and then the existing plant won't be demolished until 2 years, up to 2031. Is there any way to expedite the process so as to release the land more quickly? Before I answer this question, I do want to say that we have been discussing the proposal for a long time because it's a very important decision to make. According to what we set out in the paper and in the maps, this is a very mature community. It's densely populated and well developed. It is almost impossible to find another location to relocate the sewage treatment works, and reclamation is a no-go for the community. So we're proposing the Rock Haven development because in terms of works schedule and noise prevention measures, etc., I believe that these issues can be properly addressed. About speeding things up, Mr. Mock, we estimate that about 4 years will be needed, so we have done our best to compress the timetable. As to whether as to decommissioning, decontamination, etc., we'll see whether there is opportunity to start works partially, even before its formal decommissioning, so as to vacate land for other purposes in future. Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I just listened to the administration's answer about how this vacated site will be used, including the land to be reclaimed in Shui. The government will have regard to our views and the actual circumstances. My second point is that I want to thank the administration for raking their brains in order to cut costs, and that payments will be made in phases. My question is this, because I'm quite concerned about payments to be made later in the construction period, whether the costs will go up. Is it possible to lock in the price level so as to avoid cost escalation? Another point is about demolition of structures. I understand that the expenditure involved is more than the one spent on the new structure. I'm concerned about the odor problem. Odor problem is a long-standing one for the existing plant. Whilst local residents are happy to learn that the plant will be reprovisioned, they are also worried whether the odor problem will continue to exist after provisioning. Now, to answer the first question, we have quoted the cost and the price in MOD prices. It's called MOD in English. That is to say, is money of the day prices. We do have regard to the time periods in question and the possible inflation rates in order to draw up a more accurate estimate. And to answer Mr. Lee's question, it's true that demolition costs more than construction because it's not about taking down an old building. We're taking down the treatment plant which has been in operation for 40 years. We want to make sure in the process that odor problem will be carefully handled and that there will not be any spillover to cost and environmental concerns. The works are complex, and as a result, the cost is higher. We have 3 more members waiting to speak. For other members who would like to ask questions on this item, please come down as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we will vote on the item after the 3 have spoken. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chair. This is a mega project. The government has taken a phased approach. From experience overseas, we learned that very often at the final stages, cost overruns will happen. But on this occasion, the government is able to make savings. I have a couple of questions. According to the paper, this treatment plant will have a capacity of 340,000 cubic meters. This rock cavern has a size of 2.3 million cubic meters. Now I'm looking at paragraph 11, and according to the paper, the construction unit cost is $24,100 per cubic meters. And then together with the operation, etc., is 28,910. I don't know whether it's a typo. There's a typo here, because what is the denominator used? Is it the volume, the handling volume, or the volume of the cavern? Or is it just a typo here? The second question is demolition costs $800 million. What about the other related works and the EM&A program consultant fees? For the second question, I will give the floor to the department to give you details. For paragraph 11, we're talking about the treatment capacity by volume. Right, second question. Department, please. It's all inclusive. It covers the entire project. So for demolition and decontamination, we've quoted some 100 and I quoted this sum, and we've not broken down the figure into, say, the consultant's fee and the other portion. I'll just say that it's less than 10%. A simple follow-up, Chairman. So I take it that you've come up with the sum on the basis of the sewage treatment capacity of 340,000 cubic meters. But I've done the math, and I don't think this is the right answer. My simple question is this: do you have figures relating to the actual construction? Director? Yes. We have the bill of quantities. We do have the bills of quantities for all the works involved. Now, very often we use the GFA to calculate the unit cost, but for sewage treatment, we use sewage treatment capacity as the basis of calculation, because what we have in mind is how much is being treated by the plant per day. And that is why we adopt treatment capacity as a basis for comparison.
A simple follow-up. Let's go to paragraph 13 to try to compare this case with other projects. They are 30,000, 32,000, 33,000 per cubic meter. Please explain why they are more expensive, Director. if we simply look at the treatment facility, in Annex 4 to the paper, you can see a comparison. Let's look at the figures. This project, $28,910 for Hong Shui Q. The unit cost is $30,000. So 29,000 comparing with 30,000, more or less the same. In paragraph 13, yes, I know your figure is lower. I want to know how come that you're so smart that this time it is cheaper than the 3 projects in paragraph 13. Well, we have it in the cabinet. There are 3 factors. We have the economy of scale, and in fact, we have got direct procurement, and then within a cabinet, the risk of inclement weather is lower, and therefore the cost can be lower. This is all because they have got a more stable working environment. All right, thank you. Next, Mr. Eric Yim. Thank you, Chair. For the Sha Tin sewage treatment works, it is going to be relocated. This is because in this way they can replace the existing aging facility in a more efficient way. In the year 2019, land cost was high, and then the benefit of relocation was more significant. Currently, land prices have dropped. So for the site that will be released, I'm afraid there is a risk of it becoming idle in the long term. So I want to know whether the government intends to develop the site. Now, $12.9 billion, it is indispensable, but it is huge in size. It will help to provide a better environment to the Sha Tin residents. But then what worries me is that if the existing site will lie idle for a long time, then what sort of benefits can you get from this relocation exercise? And then 10 years will be a long period of time. In other words, there will be another 6 years that the local residents have to put up with the odor. So I hope the government will expedite the project. Are you confident that for this new project, it will have a lifespan of more than 50 years or even up to 100 years? I'll answer some of the questions, and then for the third one, I will defer to the department as to the lifespan of the project of the plant. Now, for the land to be released, now Science Park will look at the 20 hectares to be released, as well as the additional land available from reclamation, to see how they can be put to gainful use. Say, for example, if it is to be used for innovation technology, then I don't think we can judge it simply by the price tag. But of course, once we have got more information, we'll be happy to share it with you. Now, it will be some time before the land will be available. In year 2029, then it will be decommissioned, and then it takes us 2 years to decontaminate it. So we have plenty of time to plan for the after use. We won't allow the land to sit idle. Depending on the prevailing circumstances, we'll certainly put it to beneficial use, though temporary, for the public good. So I firmly believe that we'll make sure that the land won't sit idle. As to ways to expedite the project, as we've mentioned, when we construct the treatment plant, we are already moving at a faster pace. This is all because of the more stable working environment within the cabinet, and we won't be affected by inclement weather. So we have been rather aggressive or ambitious in terms of our timetable. And as has been pointed out, there will be a lot of overlapping of the stages, so such are the ways to expedite them. Can it go beyond 50 years as far as the lifespan is concerned? Mr. Mock. Well, for the digital twin technology, it can help with lowering the operational cost. There is another beauty there. That is, we can have advanced repair and maintenance that is preventive in nature. This is because the digital twin will monitor the health of the treatment works on our behalf on a continuous basis, so we can take out early preventive maintenance, and that can prolong the lifespan of the treatment plant. For the existing one in Shatin, it has a lifespan of 50 years, well beyond our original plan, so I'm confident that the future one will have an even longer lifespan. Mr. Junius Hong, well, we have been told that China and the USA will be more advanced in terms of sewage treatment, and then you come at the third place. Now you are able to save $2 billion. I think you are smart. But then my question is, you are treating 360,000 cubic meters of sewage. You have the returned tenders. Have you also consulted the mainland operators? I don't know to whom you have extended the tender invitation. What about the mainland tenderers? I think you have a list of potential bidders. What about the mainland potential bidders? Have you asked them for their interest? Have you told them that you have got a figure of over $10 billion? You have got two sums of money, one for construction of the new plant, the second for the decommissioning and demolition of the existing one. Can you not go around and ask if they're able to come up with a figure? You haven't awarded the contract, and you're smart enough to save $2 billion. We have got many enterprises. All of them, and I can name a few. If I am curious, and if I want to save another $800 million, I will try to approach them, and then I can stand to benefit from the cost saving. It will be in year 2030 that you demolish the existing plant. Why can't you sort of approach them and ask for a quote? Mr. Mock. Well, whether I resort to direct procurement or not, I need to know about the market prices for civil works as well as E&M works. Well, for civil works, we have got the experience from the northern metropolis. But then for E&M, it is usually tailor-made. It is bespoke designs. So there is a need for us to approach the suppliers around the world to have a rough idea about their market prices before we can prepare our estimates. In relation to direct procurement, we will be increasing our workload. We have to check all around the world as to which contractors will be available. Well, I don't think you are really doing the job manually. You just punch a few keys on the keyboard. So I think you have done quite a good job by gathering the information. Can you not sort of try to press a few more buttons? I've done so, and there's 7 listed companies. They're all engaged in sewage treatment. They can be BOT, etc. Well, point taken. Why don't you let the director answer your question? Well, to be frank, in the course of it, we did approach suppliers that we believed would be capable of taking this job, including those in the mainland, in Europe, etc. Well, when we invite tenders, we would like to keep up a dialogue with them. it is an open tender. And we want them to know that this is an open tender and there is this opportunity for them to submit a bid. Would you consider the names that I have got so that you can save even more money for the taxpayers? Yes, we of course welcome information from any member. Any other members wishing to ask questions? If not, then Mr. Kwok Wai Keung can have a second round and then we will put the matter to the vote. Thank you, Chair. Well, at the PWSC meeting, I said that it is a project that is ready to go. Of course, stages 1, 2, and 3 have commenced, and we have the last one here. It is stage 4, and we are going to wrap it up. Of course, I know the huge price tag is a concern, but it doesn't mean that we should hold our step. And for anybody watching the broadcast live will be worried. That is whether we are having double standards, whether we are retracting. So I think it is time for us to clarify the position. Well, in stage 1, there was a consensus. We would like to make good use of available land. The caverns are not put to any use, and so it's better to relocate offensive facilities like sewage treatment plants to the caverns. It's not because we have got a lot of money in our pocket and so we want to spend it on such a project. Rather, we would relocate them to caverns so that we can allow the land to be released for other potential uses. And that's the background. So it is not a matter of we can afford to have a second thought about it. For our future economic development, probably it isn't going to help a lot, but it will help with employment. It will give jobs to construction workers. And then for the Sha Tin residents, surely it is a project that would honor the current government's pledge to improve people's livelihood. If we don't go ahead with this project, if we leave it until 5-10 years later, I think the price tag would be different, and then the existing one will have to be sort of repaired. So, Mr. Chairman, I think there's no way but to support it. There is no other option. It is going to help with the government's wish to improve the livelihood of residents. It deserves our support.
Thank you, Mr. Kwok. I think many members today have told us about the history of this project with a bid to urge members to support the item. Anyway, I will now put this item to a vote. FCR 2025-26, paper number 37. With those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Anyone against? I don't see any. I think the majority of members who have voted are in favor of this item. So this item is carried. The next meeting of the Finance Committee will be held on the 25th of July. The meeting today is adjourned. Thank you.